Welcome to Distribution Talk with Jason Bader, the show where we dive into the stories, struggles, and solutions from business owners and thought leaders in the wholesale distribution market. Hey, podcast listeners, Jason here. In this episode, I had the opportunity to sit down with Carolyn Quinn, president of Pike Systems. Pike Systems is a janitorial supply company located in Aurora, Illinois. I met Carolyn a number of years ago as she was designing a training program for the Future Leaders Group in her buying association. I've always been impressed how she really understands the role of distribution, how it's really more about the value add than the product on the shelf. I enjoyed my conversation with her, and I hope you will too. This episode of Distribution Talk is brought to you by my company, the Distribution Team, and our upcoming seminar, Turning Branch Managers into Business Managers. Too often, branch managers are given the title, but not the instruction manual. In this seminar, we give managers and those ready to take on the role the tools they need to be successful. It's being held November 14th through 15th in one of my favorite cities, Atlanta, Georgia. Over the course of 2 days, we cover the fundamentals of profitability, customer service, inventory management, safety, preventative maintenance, delegation and empowerment, recruiting and development, effective communication, and so much more. We guarantee that this course will give participants the confidence to come back and tackle the job. For more information and registration details, visit us at distributionteam.com/training. All right, Carolyn. Hey, welcome to Distribution Talk. And, thank you for coming on. I truly appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I love your podcast. It's a fixture of my weekly drives every single week.
Oh, you all know that I paid her to say that. So that's, I think we're going to have to pitch that. Yeah, that's not fair. All right. Well, hey, as you know on the show, since you are an avid listener, I guess, we like to talk a little bit about, how you got involved with the organization. Did you get dragged into it? Did you actually come willingly? Or how did this whole thing happen for you?
So I'm very grateful to say that I chose to come work in the family business. I chose this industry. I don't think a lot of people have the opportunity to say that. I went to college out east at Babson College, which is known for entrepreneurship. So I knew I always wanted to run my own business, whatever that may be. Worked at Goldman Sachs on the trading floor for a little bit. And I still, vividly remember that call with my dad saying, hey, I want to come home and I want to know if there's a place for me in the family business. And he said yes. And now 13 years later, here we are. But, ultimately I grew up working in the business. When I was little, one of the most fun things we did was go to work with my dad on Saturdays. My sister and I would restock the showroom, get to spend some time with my dad. We always went to breakfast bright and early, 6:30 in the morning before the store opened at 8. Did everything in the business from filing to restocking to pulling orders. The only two things I've never done, I've never been one of our service techs and I've never driven the truck.
You've never driven the truck?
I've driven the truck. I've never made deliveries.
Okay, very good. As you might have heard in previous episodes, that is absolutely my favorite job in distribution. I loved driving the truck. I thought it was the greatest thing in the world. All I had to do was make it to the next delivery. That's all I had to do. Yeah. And it was a good deal. So, Well, good. Yeah, it sounds like you got up bright and early. I don't recall, going back, because I started at a young age as well, but I don't recall getting up at the crack of dawn to do that. Maybe I did. I'm not recalling. But it sounds like it was a very, something that you really wanted to do. You enjoyed it. I guess, that year away. And I read that and I saw that you had spent some time, with Goldman Sachs. Do you feel like that prepared you any for the business, or was it just something to kind of clear your head and then decide whether you want to come back or not?
It gave me a very strong sense of gratitude for what I was given all of those summers when I was working at Pike Systems, the flexibility to test out ideas and not have to go through multiple layers of management to get things accomplished. And also just the ability to have that creative thought. Goldman's a huge organization, so grateful to have worked there, but it's different. There's a lot more structure, things take longer. Your ideas are received, but the implementation of those ideas and those thoughts comes at a much later point in time. And for me, coming out of Babson, I wanted to work for a large company and one with a fantastic reputation at the time. That was
At the
years
time.
ago.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Just so that I knew that working for the family business was something that I wanted to do. And I needed to have that experience outside and, get my feet wet somewhere else.
I would agree with that. I mean, I've spoken about this before, but I'm such a firm believer that second and third generation or multiple, whoever the children coming into the organization really need that little break, that time away, just as you said, to be grateful for that situation you've been given. I've seen it in many different ways. I mean, hate to generalize, but those who didn't take that break, they rolled right out of school and right into that family business. I think that their ideas are limited. I feel like there's a limiting to that. They have not basically been beaten up by somebody outside of the organization, their family, and haven't tasted what the real world is like. Because, let's face it, growing up in the family business, yes, you do have to work twice as hard for half the respect, but
Yes, I never wanted to be a child employed by the owner. I wanted to be the chief executive officer, and I think there's a big distinction there.
absolutely there. And again, so many have gone down that road, and I've just seen horror stories. I mean, just really tough. And I'm sure you have too. I mean, both of us grew up in very niche industries, and just and it was a tight circle. And you just saw some of the rough stories of those second and third generations, just getting decimated by the time they were ready to go. If you could share with me just a little bit about when you first came back into the organization. It sounds like you were the one who initiated the phone call versus the other way around. But when you first came in, what was your specialty? Where did you make your mark in the organization?
So my degree was in marketing. So I came back and I was planning to do marketing for the company, which I did. I wrote all of our newsletters, which back in the day we used to mail out every month. And I put together proposals for the sales force. I really created the first model we had for our proposals and with fields you could fill out and populate so that it was easier for the staff. And I met with a lot of the vendors and talked to them about how we could integrate their products into the equation and roll them out properly. And I think it was about a year in, we had a salesperson leave, and I'd been banging my head against the wall, like, don't understand the Salesforce. They're just not using these tools that I'm giving them. And my dad said, well, we have an open territory. Why don't you go into sales? So I did. And that's kind of been the last 12 years of my role in the company has been very sales focused.
Speaking of that, and I'm glad you brought that up because a lot of folks have this, well, maybe it's not as popular as it once was back a while ago, that there was this perception that sales and marketing were the same thing. Mm-hmm. And I think that, you coming in from a marketing background really understand that there is a very big difference. I guess, could you explain what you feel the difference is between marketing and sales?
Oh, geez, that's a great question. So marketing's sole job is to make the sales process easier. And that comes in a lot of different forms. It could be newsletters going out. It could be just the efficiency of the sales process. How do you condense it and speed it along? But ultimately, marketing should be putting sales out customer facing as much of the time as humanly possible, and not behind the desk putting together proposals and that type of thing. But then also ensuring that the calls that they're making, the cold calls they're making, are warm calls and well received on the other end. I just had this conversation with my sales force because the manufacturers in our industry give us marketing dollars every year.
Oh,
and
yeah.
So I've met with them and I've said, all right, we need to figure out, this is how much money we have left. How do we spend it? And every idea I got back was for a promotional item that we should buy and put our logo on. And by the time I talked to the fifth one, I asked them, like, what does marketing mean to you? And they're like, well, the trade show giveaways and the trade shows we go to and the expos and that type of thing. And I'm like, well, no wonder I'm not getting the answers I wanted. I wanted to hear about webinar series that we could create and different types of campaigns we could run through our email blasts to drive sales and support our customer base. And I was getting, well, if you buy a Yeti tumbler and you put Pike systems on it, somebody's going to want that. And huge disconnect that there is. People don't know what marketing is.
And I think that's a really great point is that, sometimes the manufacturers that you're working with and the ones that they have been entrenched in a certain style and a certain way of doing business. And yeah, it's like, well, of course you're going to put my logo on your shirt and wear it proudly around. And it is very, very different. There's a lot of sophistication and a lot of software driven, a lot of data analysis that goes into marketing. I mean, this is something much bigger than putting a logo on a Yeti tumbler and things of that nature. So how do you then, stepping back, how do you educate your manufacturing community about this? Without giving them the stern look and just shaking your head. What do you do? How do you bring them along? Because I think it sounds to me like they need to be brought along this path.
Absolutely. So I'm pretty good at making a compelling argument and getting what I want when it comes to working with the manufacturers. I think that they're used to working with people that don't use their resources to the full potential. So when I bring them something and I say, okay, I have this money, I want to spend it. Here's how I want to use it. This is what I think the outcome is going to be. These are the steps we need to get there. Then even if it's outside the box and something they're not used to hearing, I typically end up getting the support. But we are so far on the value added side of the spectrum that a lot of times the support tools that they have for their products aren't something we can implement in the field when we're doing on-site training. So we've worked with them to develop better tools for selling a big auto scrubber, the end user. How do we give them resources? So we've gone from the wall chart that's on the wall in the custodial closet to something that hangs on the machine, because once the machine leaves the closet, there's no resource there if it's not right on the machine.
Right. Okay, I got you. I'm with you.
Yep. Taking it to the next level. And those things help them build their brand too. And go back to that point that I made earlier, which is marketing's job is ultimately to support sales, and sales could be in the capacity of new business or in keeping the business we already have.
So when you made that jump over to sales, and maybe some would say it was a lateral move, maybe lesser, who knows? But it sounds like you liked it. This is something you jumped in and you actually enjoyed it. I think this has been one of the big struggles with a lot of distributors and really just a lot of folks trying to hire younger people coming into the organization. Everybody wants to be in marketing, of course. Everybody graduates with a marketing degree and they all want to be in marketing. Nobody wants to sell anything. They just want to be marketing stuff. So how do you get them to maybe make the leap? Because we do eventually need people selling things. That is kind of the revenue driving side of this business.
So we've taken our sales process and we've divided it out into 3 different roles. I think in distribution, sales, the sales activity or job description has everything all lumped in together. So you're responsible for prospecting, you're responsible for closing, and you're responsible for maintaining that business. And I think to a lot of young people especially, that's really scary because you have to be good at prospecting. And then on the back end, you have to know how to use all of the products that are getting implemented into those accounts. And in the cleaning industry, our knowledge curve is steep. You think you know how to clean your house, then you go to work in the cleaning industry and you realize everything you learned is wrong and you have to start over. And then you have 15 different products that all do the same thing, but how do you fit them into the proper program for the proper client to get the results you need? So I think stripping apart those functions and allowing them to be more specialized initially while they're getting their feet wet so they can see those successes right out of the gate. They're not waiting 3 to 5 years till they have an account base and they're, hitting their targets and really feeling comfortable. They're getting a much smaller piece of the job that they can excel in and excel in very quickly.
Does that mean that you will generally have more salespeople? It sounds to me like when you're splitting up these functions, that you would have more feet on the street really than what you would say a typical distributor would have.
And that supports our value add proposition too, where we're actually in the accounts providing training and meeting regularly. I've read all of the materials on inside sales teams and how that should function. And our industry, janitorial supply industry, is just not there yet. People still don't know how to use our products. And until they know how to use them, we have to be out in the field.
Right. Oh, yeah. You all have a tremendous amount of education requirements. I spent some time with one of your cohorts down in Orlando
Yep.
discussing discussing the whole education component. I mean, I would say this is a pretty big spend for you all.
Yes. Huge.
Yeah, this is something that I look at other industries. I recently had an opportunity to interview a gentleman in the beauty supply industry, and they spend a lot of time with hairdressers, salon owners, and whatnot in the education process. Very similar to what you're describing right now. That is a huge piece of this deal.
Well, and we've had outbreaks recently that have shed light on that training component even more with, the C. diff in the hospitals and MRSA in the schools. All of those things are preventable if we're cleaning properly and for infection prevention.
Now, speaking on this education side, are you giving away this training for free, for fun and for free, with the hopes that they spend time, they come and they buy everything from you? Or have you begun to monetize some of these educational offerings?
So we have plans that we follow. We have clients that only want our consulting services or our training programs. We charge for those, and we keep increasing the price because it seems like we never charge enough. So the joke is every time we get the opportunity, we just double what we charged last time, and shockingly, they pay for it. So with that model, and then we have a hybrid model where the client may not purchase enough to justify exactly what they need to propel forward, in which case we would charge them but at a discounted rate. And then someone who's sole sourcing with us, they would get those services typically at no charge, provided that the volume's there to support.
Got it. Yeah, it definitely, you would reward those who are sole sourcing with you in a much greater capacity there. Have you all had to, I guess, become better educators? And how's that process been? I mean, I know that teaching, it's not usually innate. Some people can just jump out and they're really great educators. But how do you prepare your, I take it, is it your sales staff that is teaching, doing a lot of this training? Okay. How do you prepare them to be great educators and presenters and whatnot?
I think it comes from a place of understanding. And one of our fundamental beliefs is that for the most part, everybody that comes to work every day, regardless of what industry they're in, wants to do a good job. So understanding that going in so that as we're going through the training, especially if it's something that's dramatically different than what they're currently doing, it just helps us present it in a way that has a lot more compassion and care and allows us to connect with the group or the person that we're providing the training to. Because ultimately, we're trying to drive sales, right? We wouldn't be there doing the training if there was no benefit to the organization. And the long-term benefit is that client retention. So making that connection and understanding where they're coming from, and then also where they're at in the spectrum. So has this person been in the industry for a really long time, or are they brand new? And where we need to start that conversation with them as a foundation.
So it's not just application based. It's not just product knowledge. It's not just those types of things. You're getting deeper into these companies, into how to run their organization, how to make money at it. Yeah, yep. It's much more consultative.
Yes, I mean, we write standard operating procedures for hospitals. We have written and administered onboarding processes for housekeepers and custodial staff members. We're very entrenched in what we're doing, and that's where I get a lot of the gratification. That's one of the things that I love doing most, and why I like being in sales, because we're out there contributing to their success every single day.
It's kind of dawned on me when thinking a little bit about spending time in these smaller, in many cases, small companies. They can be small organizations. Is applying your financial background, to some of these companies. Because, let's face it, a lot of small businesses, the biggest thing they're lacking is that financial understanding. I mean, they can sell, they can do what they need to do, they can do all those things. But man, when it comes to managing cash, it's not a good situation.
Right.
I take it then that is something that you've gone in and spent some time with, with these companies.
We spend less time with building service contractors than we do any other market segment. Our main focus is K-12 education, colleges and universities, and healthcare. Similarly, understanding budget, overtime costs, et cetera, because these managers are coming in without a financial background and then they're being told, oh, you're over budget by 3 FTEs for this month. Why did that happen? And then they have to defend that, but also understand how to prevent it from happening in the future, how to predict when it is going to happen and let their superiors know, hey, we've got 15 people on vacation, it's Thanksgiving, it's Christmas, it's the 4th of July, whatever it may be, or we have surveyors in the building and we have to clean at a different level than we're used to, and we need that labor to do that.
Got it. Yeah, it sounds, I mean, again, it's really that consultative selling thing. I mean, I spent some time teaching manufacturers reps how to call on distributors. And one of the things I try to teach them is that, it's not about the features and benefits of your products anymore. It's far deeper than that. And the sooner they can transition to consultative selling and really understand, how distributors make money in this case, that's how loyalty is built. And you don't get kicked out for having a nickel, cheaper product, or, you don't get kicked out for stuff like that. So
the value add side is in every facet of the business. So when we work with our vendors, I'm looking to them and saying, hey, what can you do to be on my staff and not on my payroll? What ways can you help us be more efficient? How can you work with my team and make them more efficient? The product is secondary to all of the rest of that.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because I think sometimes the distributors I've met over the years, they are so hyper focused on the thing on the shelf. I try to remind them that they're not in that business, that thing on the shelf is not the business. Distribution is the business you're in, and in the value add. And I think you're absolutely correct there. But that's awful difficult for some people, especially I think the first generation tends to be very latched onto that. They're emotionally involved with what is on that shelf so heavily that they can't step back and understand what their role really is in that relationship. Yeah. So you recently transitioned the business. You took over this thing, and I can see on the look of your face, like some days good, some days bad. How does that transition? First of all, when was that transition, if you don't mind me asking?
That was end of 2017.
Okay. So you've been around this a little, you've had a couple of years to kind of figure this thing out.
Almost 2 years in, and when you say figure it out, that's the only source of confidence I have, which is my ability to figure out whatever I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no great manual, and I've often referred to the gaps in education from my predecessors as well. It's like, did you just expect me to find out about it, or were you going to tell me about this, or? Yeah,
well, I think the running joke is that nobody ever knew what my dad did all day, including me.
Yeah.
And so then when I took over and I had to figure out what he did all day.
Well, you can just kind of keep that a mystery as well. It's like, why give that up so easily? Keep that to yourself. Yeah. So speaking of that, tell me, what has been the biggest struggle? I mean, well, maybe not just in the last 2 years, but really in the last, 16 years now. What's been the biggest challenge that you've had to overcome to really, get where you are in your position?
I think for me right now today, and this has probably been a challenge for me all along, is the difference between working on the business and working in the business. I love being out in front of the customer, and it's really easy to get wrapped up in that and forget that I own the business and I have employees depending on me, and I have to make sure that I'm doing that strategic planning and that I'm not falling behind. A perfect example would be our website. I feel like in our industry, we're always ahead of the curve, but a year after we launch a new website, we're already behind again, and we have to keep that forward momentum going. That's probably the most simplistic example, but the strategic planning piece, as we're opening additional branches and growing, is really, really important. So I've spent the last probably 8 months or so now trying to create a model and a framework for expansion and a framework for sales so that things can be more automated and less susceptible to reinventing the wheel. We have a lot of good things going. We have a lot of things that we're doing right. And while continuous improvement is a huge focus for us, not everything has to be updated and changed all at one time. So by creating the model, then we're working off of more of a data-driven type of environment, and we're changing the things that need to be changed and keeping the good pieces.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, you do not need to change everything. Sometimes people have that belief that they need to change everything. I've got to wipe everything out. I got to start over. No, there's a lot of things that got you all where you are today that were really, really good. And I think you're right. Just, focus on the things that need some, some tweaking if necessary, and some modernization. And there's a lot of things in the business, in distribution, I hate to say it, a lot of things that don't need tweaking. They're, they're pretty darn good, and they've done really well for a long time. We don't need to get crazy about some of these things. So.
Well, and I think just the lesson that, it's more efficient and sometimes more effective to work with the business partners you already have than to go out and change everything. And that's a lesson that I've had over the last year and a half, just understanding those strong relationships that were built were not built when I was in the equation. They're 20, 30-year-old relationships that I don't understand. I don't have the foundation. I wasn't there when, the work was done that created the value like my dad was. And, as our needs have changed, understand that those resources and those partnerships are still there. We just have to ask for what we need instead of assume that those partners can't provide it, whether it's the insurance agencies we're working with or accounting firms or whatnot. Those partnerships, the foundation they have and the years of knowledge that they have in working with us can make them a better partner if we're just upfront able to communicate what our needs are.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought that up. Just that I think sometimes, those relationships, I think it's also hard for them. Let's be realistic that they are transitioning from one person to another and being able to try to satisfy those needs going forward as well.
Yep.
One of the things that it sounds to me like it helped prepare you was you were very involved with your marketing group. And you really got the ball rolling or founded the Future Leaders group of that. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
So I came in about 2 years after the group was formed as the chair of the Future Leaders Council. And the group was really designed to create a networking environment for people who were like me, looking to take over the business or in some type of leadership role within their respective distributorships. And foster those relationships and create those bonds. We call them phone buddies that last a lifetime. What do you do when you have this problem? I've heard again and again at the top, and it's really lonely at the top, especially if you don't have those people to call. So the group was formed by our parents originally, and then they decided once everybody kind of grew up together, once we were old enough to take advantage of that to create the group and help build those bonds. And we've done everything from factory tours to networking and fun activities out and about to help build those bonds.
And do you stay in touch with a lot of your original phone buddies and those types of folks?
I do, but I think that it's really important that we have people both in the industry and outside the industry to call. So I've been diversifying a little bit more lately just so that I can see what's coming next and strategize and be a little bit more strategic.
Interesting. No, that's a great point, actually, that sometimes we can get a little too industry focused. We can get so wrapped up in our own industry that we're not seeing what else is out there. And I think that's kind of one of my favorite things about my job is that I do work in multiple industries and I get to see a lot of different people out there. But where have you found these additional relationships outside of the industry?
All over the place. I think if you're just open to them, they present themselves, just asking the question. So when I meet with different people, I say, who's doing really innovative things? Who wants to keep growing and evolving versus the folks that are quote unquote milking the cash cow until retirement when they sell their business. And I want, people that are trying to do things.
I know that a lot of the guests that I've had in the past, they've talked about being members of groups such as YPO, there's Vistage, there's EO, there's a lot of these CEO groups. Is that something you've gone down the trail with?
I have not been part of any CEO groups yet. That's something that I would like to be a part of. I'm going through an executive development training program, and I'm hoping to meet some folks there that would be, when you're in the trenches with them learning together, those bonds are sometimes stronger than anywhere else.
It's really important, to find folks that you have a similar mindset with, and they're going through similar problems, even if it has really nothing to do with your primary business. There is a kinship in that, I guess, perhaps shared pain and shared realization of maybe there's a light at the end of the tunnel somewhere. Well, good. If you could just give any piece of advice to somebody who is coming into the business, maybe they're going to be coming into a family business, or maybe they're just leaving school. Why would they choose distribution? Why should they choose any of this?
Oh, wow. Really tough question. So there's just so much variety in distribution. If I look at the number of different lines we carry at Pike, the opportunity to continue to evolve and learn is endless, really. And I don't think you can say that about a lot of other industries. In distribution, we have to know more than the manufacturer does, and not only know that, but know how to integrate one manufacturer's products with another. So the amount of complexity that's there, and then also the amount of satisfaction in knowing that that program that you put together is producing results and is saving money, in some cases saving lives, and just making things easier for people is really rewarding. So I would say just at the end of the day, it's that flexibility, that creativity to match solutions with different markets and bring together multiple different manufacturers.
Nice. I hope that we can attract other people to distribution, because it really, I think not many people know about, the opportunities out there, and the diversity, and as you said, the mental challenges that can go on, as you come into a really a service-based position. I mean, that's really ultimately what we are. So, well, anyway, I truly appreciate you coming on. It's been a pleasure. I always love seeing you here and getting a chance to speak with you.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for listening. If you liked what you heard, consider hitting that subscribe button. Links to sponsors, products, and services mentioned during this episode can be found in the show description area on your podcast application, or at www.distributiontalk.com. Distribution Talk is edited and mixed by Andrea Klunder and Edwin Ruiz at the Creative Imposter Studios. This episode was brought to you by my company, The Distribution Team. We are a consulting services firm dedicated to helping wholesale distribution clients remove barriers to profitability, generate wealth, and achieve personal goals. To learn more about how we can help your company succeed, check us out at www.thedistributionteam.com.